All right, get ready, everyone, because we are diving deep into Double Game Week 25 in Fantasy Premier League. It's going to be a week full of opportunities to score big, but it's also a week where you can make some big mistakes if you're not careful.
Exactly. It's a minefield out there.
But don't worry, we're here to equip. Yeah, that's a tough call, especially when you consider what's called effective ownership, right? If you don't own Wood and he hauls again, you're going to be left behind.
Absolutely. That's the thing with FPL. It's not just about your own team. You've got to keep an eye on what everyone else is doing.
It's a mind game.
It is. And that's just one piece of the Double Game Week 25 puzzle. There's also the whole question of which teams will actually have two fixtures. Aston Villa and Liverpool are looking pretty likely, I'd say around 60% chance for each.
Okay, so we're feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah. But then there's Fulham and Spurs, who also have a shot at a double game week, although it's a bit less certain.
Right, a bit more risky.
More of a gamble.
Hold on, what about those rumors of a quadruple double game week? Now that would be massive.
Oh, yeah, that'd be insane. If Arsenal beats Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, things could get really interesting.
How so?
Well, we could end up with double fixtures for Arsenal, Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Liverpool. It's not impossible, but it all hinges on that one game.
So we need to keep our eyes peeled for the Carabao Cup result. That could change everything.
Absolutely. So we've got all these potential double game weekers to consider, which brings us to chip strategy. Specifically, the assistant manager chip.
Okay, for those who might be new to FPL or haven't used this chip before, can you quickly break down what it does and why it's so relevant right now?
Sure. The assistant manager chip basically lets you borrow another team's manager for a week. Their points for that game week get added to yours. So if you've already got Pep Guardiola as your manager, stick with him.
He's probably doing pretty well for most people.
Exactly. But if you went with someone like, say, David Moyes...
Oh, you mean if things aren't going so well?
Yeah, you might want to consider switching to Unai Emery.
Emery? Why him? Is it just because of Aston Villa's potential double game week?
That's a big reason, but there's more to it. He's a lot cheaper than Guardiola, for one thing. And Villa have decent fixtures on the whole. Plus, Emery is a bit of a tactical genius, especially in those close, unpredictable games.
So you're saying he could get more bonus points for those close wins?
Exactly. And those can make all the difference in FPL.
Okay, so assistant manager chip check. Now let's talk about some specific teams. I think it's safe to say most of our listeners probably already have some key Liverpool players. You know, the usual suspects: Salah, Haaland, Van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Gakpo. Anything we need to be aware of with Liverpool.
Yeah, just keep an eye on Trent Alexander-Arnold's fitness. He had a little knock recently, so make sure you check the team news before making any decisions.
Always good to be in the loop. Now, speaking of potential double game week must-haves, let's move on to Aston Villa. Ollie Watkins is looking pretty essential if they get those two fixtures.
I'd say he's a lock. He's nailed on to start, he takes penalties, and he plays the full 90 minutes almost every game.
He ticks all the boxes.
He does. And his underlying stats, especially his expected goals, are really promising. It means he's consistently getting into good scoring positions. It's not just luck.
Okay, so Watkins is a must-have. But what about some cheaper options for people who need to free up some funds? I've heard good things about Morgan Rogers.
Yeah, Rodgers is definitely one to consider. He's been in great form, even scored a hat-trick in the Champions League.
Wait, a hat-trick? That's impressive.
Yeah, it was. And his underlying stats back it up. So if you're looking for a differential with high upside, he could be a good shout.
I like it. Now, what about their defense? Lucas Digne likes to get forward, which is always good in FPL, but Villa haven't been the best defensively this season.
Right, that's the thing with Digne. He's a bit of a gamble. He could get you assists and bonus points, but you might not get many clean sheets.
High risk, high reward.
Exactly. It depends on how much risk you're willing to take.
Fair enough. So Watkins and Rogers are looking like the main targets, with Digne as a potential differential. What about Fulham? If they get a double game week, who are we targeting?
Well, Raul Jimenez and Antonee Robinson are the ones that stand out to me. Jimenez is on penalties, and Robinson has been getting a lot of assists this season.
Okay, good to know. But what about their fixture difficulty rating? Fulham aren't exactly known for being defensively solid.
You're right, their fixtures aren't the easiest. But if they double against weaker opposition, they could still be good picks.
So it's a bit of a balancing act.
It is. You have to weigh the potential for attacking returns against the risk of conceding goals.
All right, makes sense. So Jimenez and Robinson are the names to remember for Fulham. Let's move on to Spurs. Who are the essential assets if they get a double game week?
I'd say Son Heung-min and Dejan Kulusevski are the top picks. Son is still on penalties, and Kulusevski has been delivering consistently all season.
They're both pretty much guaranteed starters, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. They're both heavily involved in Spurs attack.
Okay, so they're the safe bets. What about some of the other midfielders, like James Maddison, Pedro Porro, or even Richarlison if he's fit? Are any of those worth a punt?
They're all decent players, but they might not get as much game time as Son and Kulusevski.
So they're more risky.
Yeah, I'd say Son and Kulusevski are the priorities, and the others are more like differentials if you're feeling adventurous.
All right, so we've talked about the teams that are most likely to double, but we need to remember that double game week isn't the be-all and end-all of FPL. We still need a balanced squad with players who can score points consistently.
Right, exactly. You don't want to go overboard chasing double game week points and end up with a weak team overall.
So who are some of those reliable players we should be looking at, even if they don't have a double game week?
Well, Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth is a great example. He's been in incredible form this season, scoring goals left and right.
I've heard good things about him.
Yeah, he's been a real star. And his underlying stats are fantastic, so it looks like this form is sustainable.
He's definitely on my watch list. Any other consistent performers you recommend?
Yeah, the Bournemouth midfielders, Hamed Traore and Philip Billing, have also been impressive. They both chip in with goals and assists, which is always valuable.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Double Game Week 25. We're breaking down everything you need to know to dominate your mini leagues.
We've set the stage, talked about the potential double game weekers, chip strategy, all those key players, but we've got more to uncover.
Exactly. We want to make sure you have absolutely all the information you need, not just to get through this week, but to crush it. So let's dig even deeper into those potential double game week scenarios.
Right. Those Carabao Cup results are going to be the deciding factor here. Those results will determine which teams actually end up with 2 fixtures.
It really is like a puzzle waiting for that final piece to fall into place.
It is.
So let's play out some scenarios here. What if Liverpool beats Spurs in that Carabao Cup match?
Well, in that case, we'd be looking at a double game week for both Aston Villa and Liverpool.
Okay, so our top picks are looking good.
Right. And those fixtures look pretty good for both of them, too. So all those players we mentioned, Watkins, Rogers, even Digne, they become even more appealing.
All right, I'm following you. But what if Spurs pulls off an upset and knocks out Liverpool?
Then things change a bit. It would be Fulham and Spurs getting the double game week instead.
Okay, so that shifts our focus.
Yeah, suddenly Jimenez and Robinson become those must-have players, and you have to look really closely at those Spurs midfielders, Son and Kulusevski. They'd be very tempting.
All right, 2 scenarios down. Now, what about that quadruple double game week possibility we talked about?
Ah, yes. The dream scenario for any FPL manager. If Arsenal wins against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, things get crazy. We could potentially see double fixtures for Arsenal, Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Liverpool all in 1 week.
Wow, that would be incredible. So many points up for grabs. Okay, with all these different possibilities, how should people be approaching their transfers right now?
I'd say the key is to be patient. Don't rush into any major moves just yet. Wait for the Carabao Cup results to come in first.
Don't jump the gun.
Exactly. Once we know for sure who's doubling, we can start making those informed decisions. No point making a transfer now and then regretting it later.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So while we wait, let's dig a little deeper into some specific players. We talked about a few already, but I'm always eager to hear more of your expert insights.
Sounds good.
Let's go back to Aston Villa for a second. We've talked about Watkins and Rogers, but I want to revisit Lucas Digne, that attacking fullback.
Ah, yes, Digne.
What makes him such an interesting pick, especially if Villa gets that double game week?
Well, he loves to get forward and create chances, which means he's got potential for assists, bonus points. He could be a real difference maker if Villa gets those 2 fixtures.
So he's a bit of a boomer bust type player. High risk, high reward.
Exactly. He's not as consistent as a Watkins, but if you're looking for a player who could have a huge week in a double game week, Digne is definitely worth considering. Just keep in mind that you're also taking on the risk of Villa's defense, which can be a bit shaky.
Okay, noted. Now, let's talk about Fulham. If they double, are there any other players besides Jimenez and Robinson worth a look?
To be honest, I think those 2 are really the main attractions for Fulham. They offer that great combination of value, form, and potential for returns. The rest of their squad is a bit more unpredictable.
Fair enough. So Jimenez and Robinson it is. What about Spurs? Any hidden gems there if they get a double game week?
Well, Richarlison could be an interesting differential pick, but there are a lot of ifs with him. He needs to be fully fit, for one thing, and even then, he's not guaranteed to start every game.
So he's a bit of a gamble compared to Son and Kulusevski.
Exactly. Those two are much safer bets if Spurs end up doubling.
Okay, so we've covered the potential double game weekers pretty thoroughly. But it's important to remember that those aren't the only players we should be thinking about. We need those players who deliver points week in, week out, regardless of their fixture schedule.
Couldn't agree more. You need that solid core of consistent performers to balance out the risks you might be taking with those double game week players.
So who are some of those players who are always worth considering, even without a double game week?
Well, Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth comes to mind immediately. He's been fantastic all season, scoring goals for fun, racking up points.
Yeah, I've been hearing his name a lot lately.
And it's well-deserved. His underlying stats are really impressive too, so it seems like his form is here to stay.
All right, Solanke's definitely one I'll be keeping a close eye on.
Yeah.
Any other consistent performers you'd recommend?
Yeah, I'd say keep an eye on the Bournemouth midfielders as well. Hamad Traore and Philip Billing have been pulling the strings for them. They're both capable of goals and assists, which is great for FPL, even without a double game week.
So even with all the excitement surrounding Double Game Week 25, we still need to remember to build a well-rounded team. A mix of consistent performers and those potential Double Game Week stars.
Absolutely. Balance is key in FPL, always.
Now, we've talked a lot about specific players, but let's zoom out a bit and talk about overall strategy. What are some general principles our listeners should keep in mind as they navigate this Double Game Week?
Well, one of the most important things is to be adaptable, like we've been saying. Things can change so quickly with double game weeks, so be ready to adjust your plans if you need to. Don't be afraid to make those last-minute transfers.
Right, flexibility is key. Don't be afraid to make changes. What other strategic tips can you offer?
Don't get too caught up in all the hype around double game weeks. It's easy to get carried away. But remember, it's just 1 week in a long season. So you don't want to sacrifice your team's long-term stability for a short-term gain.
Great advice. Keep that bigger picture in mind. Any other strategic pearls of wisdom you want to share?
I'd say be really careful with your chips. If you're thinking about using your bench boost or triple captain in double game week 25, make absolutely sure you have enough players who are actually going to play twice. You don't want to waste a valuable chip.
That's a great point. It's easy to forget about those chip details when you're caught up in the excitement.
It happens.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, given our listeners plenty to think about.
We have. It's been a really thorough deep dive into double game week 25. I hope all this information is useful.
I'm sure it will be. Before we wrap up this part, any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they try to achieve FPL glory?
Well, I'd just say trust your gut, do your research, make informed decisions, and most importantly, have fun. At the end of the day, FPL is a game, right? It's supposed to be enjoyable.
Wise words. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll wrap up our Double Game Week 25 deep dive with some final thoughts and a look ahead at what's coming up in the world of FPL. Stick around. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been taking apart Double Game Week 25, giving you all the tools you need to absolutely crush your FPL mini leagues.
We've looked at it all. Potential double game weekers, chip strategy, must-have players, even some of those under-the-radar picks that could give you a real advantage.
It's been a lot to take in, but by now our listeners should feel ready to tackle this week head-on, make those big decisions with confidence.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up our deep dive, I think it's helpful to go over those key points one last time, just to make sure they really sink in.
Okay, let's do it. Remind us what we need to remember.
First things first, stay flexible.
Always good advice.
Especially in a double game week. Things change fast, so be ready to adjust your plans as needed. If you have to make a last-minute transfer, don't hesitate.
Right, no point being stubborn and sticking to a plan that's not working anymore.
Exactly. Second, don't get too caught up in all the hype. Double game week is exciting, yeah, but remember, it's just 1 week out of a whole season.
It's easy to lose sight of that.
It is. So don't throw away your whole strategy for a short-term gain. Keep your eyes on the prize.
That's the long-term vision.
Right. And lastly, be smart about your chips. If you're thinking of using your bench boost or triple captain in double game week 25, make sure you actually have enough players who are going to play twice. Otherwise,
you're wasting it.
Exactly. You don't want that.
It's easy to get so excited about a double game week that you overlook those little details.
It really is. But hey, we've armed you with all this knowledge. Now it's just about putting it into practice.
Time to show off those FPL skills.
Right. Do your research, make those tough calls, and most importantly, have some fun with it.
Well said. Okay, as we close out our Double Game Week 25 deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question to think about as they finalize their teams.
All right, hit me with it.
Thinking about everything we've discussed today, which players are at the top of your list? Which ones are you prioritizing in your own FPL team this week? And why?
That's a great question to ask yourself. It makes you put it all together. It's about finding that sweet spot between those high-risk, high-reward double game week players and those consistent, reliable options who can deliver no matter what the fixtures look like.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance. So, to all our listeners out there, take some time to really think about that. Consider those potential double game weekers, the players in form, your chick strategy. Take all that into account and then go make those moves.
We've given you the tools, the knowledge, the insights. Now it's your turn. Go out there and dominate those mini leagues. Good luck, everyone.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Double Game Week 25. We'll be back soon with more analysis and advice to help you stay ahead in the world of FPL.
Until then, happy strategizing.
May your arrows be green.